Assalamu alaikum everyone. Dear students, let's move down to the new chapter in first PUC, that is redox reactions. A very important chapter where in the board examination it has a weightage of 4 marks. One question will be for 1 mark and one question will be for 3 marks. And this chapter it will be continued in your second PUC as electrochemistry. If you are thorough with this chapter, the concepts of this chapter, it will be very easy to understand the electrochemistry chapter, right? So in this session, we'll be discussing some terms, important terms, that is what do you mean by redox reaction, what is oxidation, and what is reduction. So when you talk about redox reaction, different categories of reactions are there which occur around us in nature. One among them is redox reactions, like when you take the burning of fuel or a rusting of iron, right? There are many reactions where redox process takes place, that is oxidation and reduction will be taking place. Now to understand what is this redox reaction, you must first know what do you mean by oxidation and what do you mean by reduction, right? So अलग अलग कॉन्सेप्ट्स है ये ऑक्सीडेशन और रिडक्शन को अंडरस्टैंड करने के लिए हम इनिशियल स्टार्टिंग में अलग कॉन्सेप्ट फॉलो करते थे, अब प्रेजेंटली हम अलग कॉन्सेप्ट फॉलो कर रहे हैं. सो शुरुआत हम करते हैं पहले क्लासिकल कॉन्सेप्ट से, यानी कि पहले रेडॉक्स रिएक्शन, कौन से रिएक्शंस को रेडॉक्स रिएक्शन बोलते थे और अब प्रेजेंटली हम कौन सा कॉन्सेप्ट फॉलो कर रहे हैं वो हम पढ़ेंगे, राइट? सो विल स्टार्ट विद क्लासिकल कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ रेडॉक्स रिएक्शन. Now, according to classical concepts, we have one concept, that is adding oxygen or involvement of hydrogen or electronegative or electropositive element. So these are all we come under category of classical concepts. So according to classical concepts, oxidation is addition of oxygen or electronegative element to a substance. What is oxidation? Addition of oxygen or electronegative element to a substance, or removal of hydrogen or electropositive element from a substance. अब जैसे कि example, I'll take magnesium. When it reacts with oxygen, you will be getting magnesium oxide, right? Magnesium is reacting with oxygen to produce magnesium oxide. तो यहां पे क्या हुआ है? Oxygen is added to this substance. You are adding oxygen to this substance. That's why we call it as oxidation, right? You are adding oxygen to this substance. We call it as oxidation. Or other than oxygen, what you are going to add is electronegative element. Say for example, hydrogen sulfide, H2S, treated with chlorine gas. It will produce precipitate of sulfur and HCl, right? So what you are doing over here is, this is some substance and you are adding electronegative element. Compared to hydrogen and sulfur, chlorine is more electronegative, so you are adding electronegative element, due to which you will be getting sulfur and HCl. So this process we call it as oxidation. Adding electronegative element or adding oxygen, we call it as oxidation, right? When you go with removal of hydrogen, same equation we can take. This is the substance. From this substance, what you are doing, you are removing hydrogen. सल्फर और हाइड्रोजन को आप अलग कर रहे हैं. हाइड्रोजन सल्फाइड से जब हाइड्रोजन अलग हो जाता है, you are removing hydrogen, then also you will call it as oxidation, right? Or removal of electropositive element. Say for example, potassium ferrocyanide. Potassium ferrocyanide, when you treat it with hydrogen peroxide, H2O2, it becomes potassium ferricyanide, K3FeCN6, right? Where what has happened is you have removed potassium. Here 4 potassium were there, and you have removed 1 potassium and it has become 3 potassium. This is potassium ferrocyanide and this is potassium ferricyanide. So potassium is a electropositive element. Metals are electropositive, so you are removing that metal. So this process also will be called as oxidation, right? So these are all the different ways how you were defining oxidation according to classical concept. So remember, according to classical concept, adding oxygen or electronegative element to a substance is called oxidation, or removing hydrogen or electropositive element from a substance is called as oxidation. Okay. Now, when you talk about the other part, reduction, what do you mean by reduction? So again, according to classical concept, removal of oxygen or electronegative element from a substance is called reduction, or adding of hydrogen or electropositive element to a substance, we call it as reduction. Okay, what is reduction? Removal of oxygen or electronegative element from a substance. Say for example, mercuric oxide, if you strongly heat it, you will get Hg plus O2. Oxygen gas will be given out. So what you are doing is you are removing oxygen from this substance. What it will be called? Removal of oxygen is called as reduction. Removal of oxygen is called as what? Reduction. Okay. Or electronegative element. Say ferric chloride, FeCl3. When you treat it with hydrogen gas, it converts itself into ferrous chloride, forming HCl. It will be forming ferrous chloride and HCl. So what we can find here is chlorine is electronegative element. So 3 chloride ions were there. Now it has changed to 2 chloride ions. It was ferric chloride. Now it has changed to ferrous chloride. Okay, you are focus on the electronegative element. You are removing electronegative element from that substance. There were 3 chlorine atoms. Now there are only 2 chlorine atoms. So removal of oxygen based on this equation, or removal of electronegative element based on this equation, you call it as reduction. Or addition of hydrogen, go with the same equation. You are adding hydrogen, right? You are adding hydrogen in this compound. So addition of hydrogen, we call it as reduction. Addition of hydrogen is called as what? Reduction. Or you can add up some electropositive element. That time also we call it as reduction. Okay. Say if you take mercuric chloride treated with stannous chloride, you will be getting mercurous chloride plus stannic chloride. So here mercuric chloride, one more mercury atom is added by the reaction with stannous chloride. So it is becoming Hg2Cl2. It was HgCl2, now it has become Hg2Cl2. So you have added electropositive element, right? So like this, these are all the reactions which show that uh, adding hydrogen or electropositive element, or removal of oxygen or electronegative element from a substance, we call it as a reduction, right? So redox reactions are those where one part stands for reduction, the other part stands for oxidation. When these all reactions, previous reactions and these reactions, when you compare, पूरे जब आप चेक करेंगे, हम यहाँ पे अलग अलग पढ़े, एक को हम कैटेगरी को आप ऑक्सीडेशन बोले और इन रिएक्शंस को आप रिडक्शन बोल रहे हैं। अगर आप पूरे सब्सटेंस जो रिएक्ट हो रहे हैं उनको चेक करेंगे तो ये पता चलता है कि ऑक्सीडेशन भी हो रहा है, रिडक्शन भी हो रहा है। सेम रिएक्शन में ऑक्सीडेशन भी होता है, रिडक्शन भी होता है। जैसे कि यहां पे देखो, हाइड्रोजन sulfide has changed to sulfur. You have removed hydrogen, we call it as oxidation, right? At the same time, this hydrogen is combining with chlorine. You are adding hydrogen to chlorine, and adding hydrogen we call it as reduction. If you check from here to here, H2S has changed to sulfur. You have removed hydrogen, we call it as oxidation, right? It will be called as what? Oxidation. And chlorine to HCl, what you have done? You have added hydrogen, that's why it is becoming HCl. So this will be called as what? Reduction. So always redox reactions are those where oxidation and reduction takes place simultaneously at the same time. ऐसे रिएक्शन है जहां पे ऑक्सीडेशन और रिडक्शन एट ए टाइम होता है। आपको कोई ऐसा रिएक्शन नहीं मिलेगा जहां पे सिर्फ ऑक्सीडेशन होता है, या फिर ऐसा रिएक्शन नहीं मिलेगा जहां पे सिर्फ रिडक्शन होता है। जब भी ऑक्सीडेशन होगा उसी टाइम पे रिडक्शन भी होता है, और जब भी रिडक्शन हो रहा है उसी टाइम पे कोई दूसरा स्पीशीज ऑक्सीडेशन में पार्टिसिपेट करता है, राइट? सो the simultaneous oxidation and reduction taking place in a reaction are called as redox reactions. Redox reactions are those where simultaneous oxidation and reduction takes place. Okay.